Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here, and today I am talking about a big old stack of discs from varying labels, including Sony Pictures. I've got one from Film Masters I'm really excited to talk about. Some Warner Brothers stuff and some Warner Archive stuff. So, a bunch of things that we're going to talk about. And we'll start with, just a truly fantastic documentary, maybe one of the great documentaries ever. I mean, if you ask me and my podcast partner, Elric Kane, we will definitely say that American Movie is truly one of the greatest, most inspirational documentaries out there. It is playing as a double bill with another great documentary called Hands on a Hard Body at the Los Angeles New Beverly Cinema in late November, if you happen to be in LA at that time. I just wanted to throw that out there. But so this is the new 4K release of American Movie, which is exciting, except I know it's going to tick some people off, as it, rightfully might, because this came out on Blu-ray like last year, maybe? I mean, 2 years ago at the most. And they have made some improvements to the disc. Okay, let's back up for a second. So I'm just curious. It takes a village to make a movie, but when that village is in Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, and not Hollywood, the results are at times bizarre, comical, and very American. With the help of his mother, his 82-year-old uncle, Uncle Bill, and a local cast of hilarious weirdos, filmmaker Mark Borchardt fights his way through internal and external roadblocks to achieve his goal to make his movie his way. His inspirations comes from films as disparate as The Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Seventh Seal, as well as his experiences growing up amid the gray skies, rusty cars, and ranch houses on Milwaukee's Northwest Side. Spanning over 2 years of struggle, financial decline, and spiritual crisis, American Movie is a story of ambition, obsession, excess, and one man's quest for the American dream. So, yeah, I mean, that's a nice summation of it. The film was directed by Chris Smith and produced by Chris Smith and Sarah Price. Chris Smith has gone on to do, obviously, a ton of documentary work all over the place, but he's been doing a lot for Netflix of late. He did the Jim and Andy documentary. He did the Wham documentary last year. He did Senior with Robert Downey Jr. and his dad, Robert Downey Sr., which is a really fantastic doc that I still think is a little slept on because it's Netflix and they don't promote their stuff at all, which is really sad. So a lot of stuff just kind of gets a little, attention when it comes out and then kind of disappears. There's a series called Mr. McMahon on HBO Max that he worked on. He's got a new Devo doc that I'm hearing is really good. He did Home Movie, which is a really cool DVD only, unfortunately, movie about people with unusual homes. But this is where it all starts. And this film made quite a splash in 1999 in terms of the documentary circuit, and people were just so taken with Mark Borchardt and his friend Mike. And that's Mike. That relationship and just Borchardt's, his fortitude, his philosophies about life. If you look at him and see how he looks, you may make certain judgments and say this guy, may not have anything at all intelligent to say, when in fact he's incredibly insightful and intelligent and thoughtful and philosophical and just a real character, just somebody that's not like anybody you've ever seen. And he's working on a movie called Coven. And one of the things I was going to say is that when the Blu-ray came out, to our disappointment, Coven was not included as an extra on the Blu-ray. It had been included previously on the DVD. That's been rectified here, and now we have the Blu-ray. I'm sorry, the Coven short included here in HD. Deleted scenes, director and cast commentary, so you can get rid of your DVD. I'd been holding on to my DVD, but you know, the 4K looks very nice, and I love this movie so much. There's no way that I wouldn't want to have it in this higher resolution version. It's just truly a classic. Again, it's one that I think continues to inspire people to this day because of Mark's spirit. He goes through a lot of bad stuff. Like, he's working a job cleaning bathrooms at one point, and he's just in a place where he's fighting alcoholism. You know, he's got a lot of things he's working to fight against. And in the face of all that, he's still being creative and writing stories, and he's just truly one of a kind. So very excited to get this on 4K. Obviously, highly recommended if you're a fan of American movie. Definitely worth checking out. Now, this is my first experience with Film Masters, and they've done a lot of cool stuff previous to this that I'm very curious about, that I have yet to check out. You know, they've done like some older, it's like sort of like 50s monster movies that were in the public domain, and then they have some others like 5 Minutes to Live, which is an old Johnny Cash movie that he's in, like a sort of a serial killer movie. They have a giant Gila monster. So they've done, and what I'm hearing is that they're doing great work with the restorations that they've done. And that's very exciting, you know. Okay, so like things like, let's see here, Common Law Wife is one that just came out. The Swiss Conspiracy. Actually, they've done more than I even realized. Door to Door Maniac was what I was thinking of, and that may be all. Our Beast from the Haunted Cave is another one. Some of them are public domain type titles. Killer Shrews, I think, is another one they maybe did. Maybe not. Maybe that's not one of theirs. But these public domain titles are tricky because, you know, they're out there in some form or another, and it's tough to decide whether to do some kind of a remastering of these titles because they're so widely available, because there's no copyright on them, so anybody can put out a crappy version of them and nothing can stop them from that. So it becomes difficult. Their market's kind of saturated in a lot of ways. So I respect when a label takes this on and does a nice job with restoration. Now, this particular movie I'm going to talk about is not like that. In fact, it is a basically lost movie called Redneck Miller, and it's from 1976, directed by John Clayton, starring nobody that I really recognized, and it's fascinating. It's a movie that first came onto my radar because of Quentin Tarantino, and because Tarantino showed it. He did a series of like a Grindhouse month for his birthday month in 2011, I think, at the New Beverly, and he ran just a whole bunch of double bills that were favorites of his, and so he'd gotten a hold of this one. It's a regional film. It's kind of like blaxploitation meets Hicksploitation, where you have a radio DJ, local radio DJ. I want to say is it Charlottesville, North Carolina? I think it's where it's filmed, is somewhere in that area. Local radio DJ is sort of framed for a drug heist that happens at the beginning of the film, where he has a really souped up motorcycle that's stolen and used to steal a shipment of drugs that's dropped off in the middle of a field by an airplane. And the gentlemen trying to pick it up start coming after the DJ. The DJ is like, hey man, I didn't do anything. And so then it becomes sort of this conflict between them. But the characters in it are fascinating because you have the DJ himself, and then you have like some of these folks with character names Well, I wonder if it even, hold on. A rare exploitation film from 1976 follows DJ Miller characters to clear his name. Scanned in 4K from one of the only surviving rare 35mm release prints, this print was run through multiple rounds of restoration, including dust busting, dirt and debris removal, and repair of deep scratches that were digitally removed. The original print was very faded, having lost much of the blue and yellow tones, and was color corrected to bring back the original film grade. This regional U.S. feature film has never had a formal home video release or been screened theatrically outside the U.S. Yeah, so this is a really big deal. Like this was a movie when he screened it and I missed it. I was like, oh man, what a bummer. This is not, this isn't gonna be something I'm gonna be able to find. It's just never been aired. I don't think it had much in the way of television airings. Like, so it's really, really rare, and it's fun. It's a fun, kind of goofy, kind of intense, combination of, like I said, sort of exploitation and blaxploitation elements. And I enjoyed it, and I was very glad. And it looks fantastic. Like, just hearing this is off of 35 print, they really did a heck of a job with the restoration, and that gets me excited about anything else that Film Masters is doing, because it's really good stuff, really well done, and I was blown away by it. This is a 1,500 copy run. It's a limited edition. It includes a commentary by Justin Humphries, who's definitely done some research about the film and has some insights into the filmmakers and stuff like that. It also has a booklet essay by Justin Humphries, which around 2007, Quentin Tarantino began circulating an ultra-rare 35mm print of Redneck Miller on the revival theater circuit, and word of mouth spread about this buck-wild 1976 exploitation blaxploitation hybrid. Its catchy title and descriptions of certain hysterical scenes and lines began popping up online, and psychotronic movie lovers' curiosity was piqued. Its title character, played by Al Adamson regular Jeffrey Land, anyway, I won't go into the essay, but it's a really nice presentation. It's got, this slipcase, and it's, like I said, this is a lost movie, more or less. So it's cool that it's finding its way back with this release from Film Masters. All right, moving on. From Sony, we have Nine Queens. And this one, I have a history with this film. It's from 2000. It's directed by Fabian Bielinski, and I don't know too much of his other work, but when I was working, I basically had a period before I got into music supervision, which is what I do now, and it was a time when I was working in the vaults of some production companies, and I worked at one specific one. And one of the editors there was a big movie fan, and he and I connected over that on the lunches. Sometimes we talk movies, and this was right around 2002-ish, maybe. This came out in 2000, but the Blu-ray or the DVD, I guess it would have been, must have come out around that time, because this guy had seen Nine Queens, and he really liked it a lot, so much that he recommended it to me, and then every single time I saw him subsequently, he asked me if I had watched it yet, which, by the way, don't ever do that to anybody. No offense meant to this gentleman, but like, it's putting undue pressure on the movie and making you feel weird that you haven't done it yet, and it makes an awkward situation for the movie and for the relationship with the person that you're recommending movies to. Let them get to the movies in their own due time. If they don't get to them, fine, don't worry about it. But so what it ended up doing is it sort of put me off the movie. Like he asked me about it so much that I was just like, all right, fine, already, I'll watch it. And so I do remember watching it circa 2002 or whatever, and being, putting too much pressure on the movie to be good. And I liked it, but I was also annoyed by it. And I do still think it's a tiny bit too long. But all this time later, 22 years later, I finally get to come back to it again on this nice Blu-ray, and I'd forgotten basically most of what it was about. other than it's a con man movie, it's kind of like is it Spanish, I think? Small-time swindler Marcos Ricardo Darin observes Juan Gaston Paul's pulling off a scam on a cashier and then getting caught as he attempts the same trick again. Claiming to be a policeman, Marcos drags Juan out of the store and then reveals himself to be a fellow grifter with a high-stakes game in mind and invites Juan to be his partner. When an old-time con man enlists them to sell a set of extremely rare stamps, forged set. The Nine Queens, the tricky negotiations that ensue, introduce a cast of suspicious characters, including Marcus's beautiful sister and their innocent young brother. As the deceptions and duplicity mount, a slew of thieves and con artists make it difficult to figure out who is conning whom. I want to say this is in Spanish, but I am not 100%. Yes, Spanish audio. Yes. So coming back to it now, all I remember is it's a con man movie, and it does have, sort of a David Mamet vibe where you're just kind of like suspicious of everyone, and you can kind of make some guesses about what's going on that may or may not pay off by the end. But I was able to sort of guess where it was going. And maybe that's partial memory. I don't know, but I really didn't remember the movie very much at all. But needless to say, it's good. It's a good movie. It's better than I remembered. All that pressure removed and all the pushiness from before. Now it stands out as something that I get why people were excited about around this time. However, I think it's been not talked about quite as much in the ensuing years. So it's nice to get this Blu-ray. Unfortunately, it doesn't have any features. The transfer looks nice, but there's nothing else happening with it. I'd actually kind of love to hear even a subtitled interview with the director, the writers, or whoever, just to get a little bit more insight about it. But regardless, it's nice to have this on a Blu-ray. Definitely recommended. Nine Queens. Okay. Some 4Ks. So we have The Hitcher. Now this is the Warner Brothers release. I haven't talked about it on the channel yet, but I have the Second Sight, awesome special edition that is, obviously going to destroy this. This is just a really remarkable, long-awaited disc. But if you don't want to drop, whatever, $50, this is a little bit less expensive, and I'm not 100% sure if it's the same scan, but I'm going to assume it might be. Don't quote me on that, but it has an archival commentary with director Robert Harmon and Eric Red, which I believe is included on the Second Sight, as well as Bullseye interview with director Robert Harmon. So you've got a couple features versus quite a bit more, including a really great C. Thomas Howell interview on the Second Sight. That's not included here. But, again, less expensive option. You don't have to import it. And it's truly one of the great slasher thrillers of the 1980s, with one of the most remarkable performances from the great Rutger Hauer as this unstoppable serial killer that is picked up by a naive kid who's basically doing drive-away, which I don't know if it's a thing anymore, but basically you could hire people at some, from some part of the U.S. and have them drive a car out to you on the coast, let's say. And I think I can't remember if he's going to San Francisco or where he's going, but so he's driving by himself. It's a rainy night. He's fallen asleep. He sees the hitcher in question. He pulls over. He picks him up. He immediately says, "My mother said never to do this." And he should have heeded his mother's advice, because soon after that, the Rutger Hauer character starts acting weird. Eventually, he has to basically forcibly kick him out of the car, and then he keeps passing him on the road and seeing how he's killing people that he's hitching rides with. And it becomes a really weird situation where he's sort of dreamlike in a way. Like, it's not clear if he's really happening or if he's really killing these people and what's going on. And it just continues to escalate in this really remarkable way. So it's a pretty great movie, and one that had not gotten a really official Blu-ray release ever. I had a German import of it that was okay, but we had all been kind of waiting with bated breath for this 4K, which had been talked about for quite a long time. But so now you have this option as well if you don't want to go with the second sight. I mean, I recommend the second sight if you are deeply into the movie. I recommend second sight's versions of just about anything over a studio version, because second sight really puts a lot of care into their releases. But regardless, this is for those that maybe either won't be able to get that set, or as I said, are just not interested in paying that much money, which I also understand. Next up we have Tag. Now this is a 4K. I've reviewed the Blu-ray here, and it's one of those that I'm just a weirdly big fan of. I find it to be just one of those movies that continually amuses me, because it's based on a true story about a group of friends that played tag from, I don't know if it's like they started in high school or whatever, but they've been playing for 20 years is the idea. And there is actual footage of them, the real guys, at the end of the movie, finding each other and tagging each other. The thing is that they play where it's 1 month a year. I can't remember if it's May or June. It's open season, and they don't live in the same states. So it was a matter of like a bunch of guys, flying out to wherever the other person lives, putting on disguises so they can tag the person, and then, using it as an excuse to keep connected. But they kind of amp it up a little bit in the story, of course, dramatically. It opens with Ed Helms getting a job as a janitor at this company, and you find out it's John Hamm's, I can't remember if it's an insurance company or something else, but he's basically gotten a job just so he can be inside the building and tag John Hamm, but also to tell him that the Jerry character, played by Jeremy Renner, who has supposedly never been tagged, is getting married, and that they all have to band together and make a plan to go to his wedding and tag him so that they can not be embarrassed by the fact that they've never tagged him. And it becomes sort of a reunion thing. So they get back together with their other friends played by Jake Johnson and Hannibal Buress, and they have like this history in there. So there's a little bit of like Grosse Pointe Blank in there, in terms of like returning home, and there's some old flames, Rashida Jones, that, is sort of a, liked by both the Jake Johnson and the John Hamm characters. And so it's got sort of that quippy, friends for a long time kind of dialogue, and some fun slow motion stuff of Jerry dodging being tagged. And I just enjoy it. I think it's a fun friendship movie, and just a movie that's really grown on me over the years. This 4K looks really nice. Like, the Blu-ray looked great. The movie came out in 2018, I think? And the Blu-ray looked very good, but the 4K looks even better, and I was very happy with its presentation. They ported over the, I think, 3 features that were part of that Blu-ray, and it was Meet the Real Tag Brothers, and that's where you get to meet the real guys that inspired there was basically an article, and I can't remember if it was GQ or what, but there's actually a reporter character in the movie doing the article that will then inspire this movie. And there's some footage, as I said, of them at the end of the movie. Deleted scenes, and then a blooper and a gag reel. And that's very fun stuff. So minimal in terms of extras, but again, a movie that I personally have found a lot of fun. Like, I've returned to this movie like 5 times or 4 times, which I didn't expect when it came out. I was like, that sounds silly, but there's just something about this group of guys playing a game movie. I like game movies, like whether it's Midnight Madness or Tag the Assassination Game or Gotcha or Scavenger Hunt, I just like game movies. And so that might be part of the appeal for me. I can't fully explain it, but they have good chemistry together, and they're a lot of fun, and it's a sweet movie ultimately. So that is Tag on 4K. And we have one more Ed Helms movie. This is also Warner Brothers. This is Vacation, the 2015 update. I don't want to call it a remake. I guess it's a sequel. It is from John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein. I reviewed their movie Game Night, which is a better movie than this. But they've done a ton of stuff. And John Francis Daly, obviously Sam Weir from Freaks and Geeks. I've been tickled to death to see, and I think I mentioned this in my Game Night review, how great he's done for himself as a creative, as a director, as a writer. Like, he's still pretty young and has made a ton of movies, and they're good. Game Night is good. Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves is good. I'm sure they have some other stuff in the works that will be interesting. This is an intriguing follow-up film to the 80s classic National Lampoon's Vacation, starring, of course, Chevy Chase and Beverly D'Angelo, who show up in this movie as their Griswold grandparents' character in this case. But Ed Helms has taken over the role of Rusty, who has been played by Anthony Michael Hall and I'm blanking on the guy from Night of the Creeps right now. So sorry. So he's now grown up. He has his own family. He's married to Christina Applegate, who is, not that you need me to tell you this, but one of the great comedic actresses of this generation. Like, just so funny and so good in this. And so Ed Helms has had this like cabin trip that they go on every year, and he discovers, looking back at the old family photos, that he actually overhears his wife saying, I'd love to go to Paris. I'd love to do anything else. And so he decides to take his family. He's got two sons that kind of are interesting because the younger one harasses the older one. But he decides, like, let's do a trip to Wally World, as I did with my family. And so, it's a new take on that kind of story. They have a crappy rental car. Well, actually, it's a crappy European minivan kind of thing, which they definitely take a lot of mileage, no pun intended, out of that car and the problems they have with it. But yeah, going to visit his sister, who's married to Chris Hemsworth, which is very funny. Charlie Day pops into this. Ron Livingston is another airline pilot, because Rusty plays a guy who works for an airline called Econo Air, and Ron Livingston works for like some major airline, just very snooty with Ed Helms' character. Nick Kroll shows up. Tim Heidecker shows up. Michael Pena, Colin Hanks. A lot of fun cameos in this. Does it all work? Not necessarily, but there's definitely some very funny stuff here, and it's very much in keeping with the traditions of the original one, including opening with the song Holiday Road. I think it's a new version, if I'm remembering. I don't think it's a Lindsey Buckingham, or it's at least a different remix or something, over a bunch of awkward family photos, whereas the original movie opened over a bunch of weird and funny postcards. This starts with like those photos of families where you see the beginning, it looks normal, and then you like reveal the whole photo and there's some weirdness going on in there that's super funny. And I thought that was a really nice way to start it. Really tease up the tone of the movie. But a lot of enjoyable performances, and the disc looks very nice in 4K. In terms of the extras, it has Returning to Wally World, which is about 10 minutes, and the Griswold Odyssey. They both function in sort of a making of capacity. That the Griswold Odyssey is about 18 minutes. Georgia, which is about filming in Georgia, that's a couple minutes long. 12 and a half minutes of deleted scenes, and a gag reel that's about a minute and a half. So some nice features. I wouldn't mind a commentary from the gents, but that was not included here. So I guess they didn't record one, but I'd love to hear their thoughts. Both John Francis Daly and his partner there, Jonathan Goldstein, talking about this adaptation. Anyway, good disc. On to the Warner Archive stuff. We start with Prairie Home Companion, which I want to say is Altman's last movie. This is Robert Altman, of course, I'm talking about. And I'm pretty sure I remember hearing that it was so... it is his last. It was so late for him because he passed away in 2006, and this movie came out in 2006. So he was sort of working, but I know Paul Thomas Anderson was on set, and I think I'd heard that he was helping. I don't know if I have any full confirmation of that, but Prairie Home Companion, I hadn't seen it since it came out, and it's a really nice ensemble cast. It is, of course, an adaptation of sorts of the Garrison Keillor radio program that he originated in, I want to say 1974, after a visit to the Grand Ole Opry when it was closing down. I think he was doing a story for New York Magazine or something like that. And he sort of came up with this idea for an old-timey variety show that's, a lot of it is music-based, folk, bluegrass, country music, but it also featured him giving a rundown of the news from Lake Wobegon, which is sort of a fictional hometown that he was from. And it's a very down-home kind of show, but had a huge following of listeners that had built up. I want to say they celebrated 40 years in 2014, and I think that's when it maybe went off the air. I'm not sure. But Keillor sort of wrote up this screenplay, which it gives you sort of a look backstage during the last broadcast of their radio show. All kinds of drama with some interesting cast members, including Meryl Streep, Lily Tomlin, Lindsay Lohan, Garrison Keillor himself, of course, Woody Harrelson, John C. Reilly, Virginia Madsen, Kevin Kline, who plays a detective, and he is actually on the commentary with Robert Altman in the on the disc here, which comes from the DVD. Let's see, Tommy Lee Jones, L.Q. Jones, Maya Rudolph, Robin Williams. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Shows up for a minute. Anyway, it's a great cast. It's a fun sort of behind the scenes look at this radio show. Is it his best movie? No, it's not, but it's at least an interesting last effort based on something. I guess his wife, Waltman's wife, was a diehard fan, and that was part of the reason he got involved with this. But it's neat to finally have it on Blu-ray. I hadn't realized it hadn't been, so that leaves just a few films of Altman's that still have not made it to Blu-ray. But it's a nice disc. It's a 235 wide transfer. It's shot by Ed Lachman. It looks great, beautifully lit. Lachman's one of the great cinematographers working now. And so this has some additional scenes, a behind-the-scenes documentary that is about like 49 minutes long, I want to say. So it's a good, a good chunk talking to the cast and crew about Come and Play With Us, a feature companion, 49:16. That's how long it is. So it talks to Garrison Keillor. He talks about the origins of the show. The cast talks about their fandom for the show, and then they sort of get into the making of the movie itself. Deleted scenes with optional commentary. On stage at the Fitzgerald, a music companion. That's extended musical performances and advertisement segments, as well as a soundtrack preview where you can jump to specific songs on the disc. They had since it was public radio, they couldn't use real ads, so they had fake ads. I forget, like one of them's like biscuits, and I should remember these ads, but it's fun to hear those and how they play out as part of the whole process. Very, very interesting idea, and I can see why it had the following it had. Just a unique, special show. So anyway, that's Altman's last movie, Prairie Home Companion. Then we have some classics here. We have Conflict, and this is one that I only discovered last year for the first time, which is shocking to me because I'm a big Bogart fan, and this is a really interesting Bogart performance. The other reason it's interesting is it stars Sidney Greenstreet. So anytime you had sort of the cast of Casablanca mingling in some other way, or if you had Greenstreet and Peter Lorre in a movie, I always like that stuff. This one is intriguing because it's about an unhappily married man who concocts a scheme, and that's Bogart. And this is like, he didn't do a ton of villain roles, but I always find it amusing and interesting when he does. So he's married to a woman. He's kind of more into her younger sister, and Sidney Greenstreet is if I recall, is he a sheriff or a cop of some kind? But let's just see here. Conflict is a love triangle with murder at its heart and atmospheric film noir of rainy nights, looming shadows, fatal romance, and a trench-coated killer who walks out of the mist, all directed by Curtis Bernhardt, a filmmaker skilled in the expressionistic style of his native Germany. The story embraces the perfect noir topic, the almost perfect crime. Humphrey Bogart plays Richard Mason, married to nagging Catherine, but in love with her sunny sister. Shortly after a 5th wedding anniversary at the home of a friend, Richard decides to remove the obstacle of his happiness. He sets up an accident that is going to kill his wife, and hopefully nothing that will point to him. But so it appears that she's dead until things start to make it questionable as to maybe she's not, or maybe there's a supernatural thing happening. And I love that sort of ambiguity in this sort of story. I also love to see Bogart driven crazy. So it's super enjoyable in that sense, and has a good solid ending. But yeah, a really fun Bogart is a villain movie, and I was happy having just discovered it last year. Didn't even really have time to process that it didn't have a Blu-ray, so now it does, and it looks great as usual. Definitely for Bogart fans, definitely check out Conflict. Next up, we have Journey into Fear, and this one is from Norman Foster, but it has a really great cast. Joseph Cotten, Dolores Del Rio, Agnes Moorehead, Orson Welles, Everett Sloane, and so you've got a lot of the core Mercury radio company, Wells's radio company gang in this, and it's let's see here. Orson Welles' touches of cinematic brilliance make Journey into Fear a stunning success. From Wells's Mercury production comes this imaginative and exciting tale of terror under the direction of Norman Foster. Joseph Cotten, who also wrote the screenplay adapted from the novel by Eric Ambler, stars as an American gunnery engineer pursued by Gestapo agents. Yeah, so he's visiting Europe with his wife, and Everett Sloane calls him away. I can't remember if Everett Sloane's deal, but he basically calls him to this club where there's a murder, and then he's sort of entangled with the murder, and then there's other espionage-y, spy-y stuff happening that he gets embroiled in. So it's a little Hitchcock-ish, sort of. His adventures bring him to cross paths with an impressive array of characters portrayed by Doris Del Rio, Ruth Warwick, Agnes Moorehead, Everett Sloane, Hans Conried, and Welles himself, who plays Colonel Haki, head of the Turkish secret police. Cinematography by Karl Strauss is low-key and stylized, with a reviewer of the era pointing to its brilliant atmosphere, a nightmare of pursuit, and when the shot comes, it leaps at the eye and ear. Journey into Fear is a thriller worthy of cinematic master Orson Welles. I should have mentioned on Conflict, we have, in terms of features, classic 1945 WB cartoons, Life with Feathers, Trap Happy Porky, WB 1945 shorts, Peaks at Hollywood, and Our Animals actors, as well as an audio-only Conflict radio broadcast from September 1945 starring Bogart, reprising the role. This one has 3 Orson Welles Mercury Theater radio broadcasts. This is a really cool reason to snag this. And it's not of this movie necessarily. In fact, it's Dracula from 1938, July 1938, and then a broadcast of Treasure Island from July 1938, and A Tale of Two Cities. Those are like subsequent 3 weeks in July in 1938. Those are 3 broadcasts from the Mercury production group. And I haven't had a chance to check those out yet, but that's pretty cool to have as a feature on this. 3 of these radio adaptations from a great group of actors that, that's part of the reason they got into movies, is because of the stuff they were doing on the radio and how much it appealed to people. So that's a cool one. Another one I hadn't seen. And these last 2 I didn't get a chance to check out yet. I Remember Mama is a big favorite of my friend Albert Kane's. It is directed by George Stevens, who's one of his favorite directors, who did, of course, A Place in the Sun, a ton of other stuff like Shane, Giant, Swing Time, Woman of the Year, The More the Merrier. I really like that a lot. Gunga Din, and he did a ton of stuff. He's a great director. So this is I Remember Mama, and it is based on a stage play, which is based on a novel, I think, is what I remember. Mama didn't leave the old country and move into the Larkin Street house to become rich. She left because all her siblings and in-laws were already setting down roots in the USA. Family was where Mama always fit best. Right in the heart of things, Director George Stevens made his transition from breezy pre-war films to the acclaimed masterworks of his later career with this tender charmer about a Norwegian immigrant family in 1910 San Francisco. Irene Dunne, who I adore, is a fantastic actor, as Mama. Barbara Bel Geddes, the matriarch of a vastly different family in TV's Dallas. I totally forgot about Barbara Bel Geddes on Dallas. Oscar Holmka and Ellen Corby, Grandma Walton on the Waltons, all earned Academy Awards nominations, giving performances embraced in the smile-making glow of a bygone era, ties that endure, and most of all, Mama. This one does not have any features, but it is 134 minutes long, so 2 hours and 14 minutes. And it does have some things in common with the Val Lewton movies, I noticed, because the adaptation is by DeWitt Bodine, who worked on some of the scripts for Val Lewton, and it's shot by Nicholas Musaraka, who shot a good percentage of those Lewton films, and he also shot Out of the Past, one of the great, I think still pretty underrated cinematographers of the 40s. Really, really beautiful cinematography, and it's an RKO production on top of that, so all those sort of connect it with the Lewton films. Not a horror movie at all, but I did find that intriguing. So this is one I still want to check out, but I know Elric's a big fan, so I definitely have high hopes for it. And I love Irene Dunne and George Stevens, so that's that. And then lastly, we have this double feature of Johnny Quest movies. Now, these are not, the old 60s cartoon. This property has had some updates. Now, these two in particular, Johnny's Golden Quest from 1993, it's an animated made-for-television film produced by Hanna-Barbera in 1992, apparently, and originally aired on the USA Network on April 4th, 1993. And it is a follow-up to the 1964-65 Johnny Quest cartoon series and its 1986 revival, The New Adventures of Johnny Quest from the Fantastic World of Hanna-Barbera. And so this is from 93. And the other one is Johnny Quest versus the Cyber Insects. Now that's from 1995, also a made-for-television movie that I guess aired on TNT in November of 1995. So these are made-for-TV movies with the Johnny Quest characters updated for the 90s. Nearly 30 years after the landmark animated series was brought to prime television by Hanna-Barbera, the continued popularity of Johnny Quest led the studio to create two new feature-length Quest adventures, which are presented here on Blu-ray. In Johnny's Golden Quest, longtime Quest fans get to meet the women behind the adventurous men, joining scientist Benton Quest, his plucky son Johnny, bodyguard Race Bannon, and Johnny's young friend Haji are Benton's biologist wife Rachel, Race's ex-wife Jade, and 12-year-old Jesse. In Johnny Quest versus the Cyber Insects, the evil Dr. Zinn has genetically modified household pests into disturbingly large insects he calls assassinoids, fearless and devoted warriors that will conduct his plan for world domination. Team Quest, headed by internationally respected scientist Benton Quest, is Earth's only hope. When the good doctor becomes Zinn's captive, the stakes and the action quotient grow higher. Enter Johnny Quest, Dr. Quest's bright, imaginative, and heroic young son, ex-special agent Race Bannon, Johnny's child genius friend Haji and Jesse, Race's daughter, and their robotic pal Fordak, and Bulldog Bandit to complete the job, vermin extermination, before it's too late. So very cool that these two feature-length, 90-minute each movies, both included on this disc, both look great. They're 4:3. They're not widescreen or anything because of when they were produced, but really neat to have these if you're a fan of the series and you want to see these updated films, or if you remember them from their airings. I'm sure there was probably DVDs of these, but it's nice to have more Johnny Quest on Blu-ray. I've always been a fan ever since I started to see reruns of the old television show on Sunday mornings back where I'm from. It immediately drew me in from that very opening drumming of the wonderful theme music. So neat to see these TV movies now both included on this Blu-ray. So definitely recommend that as well. That will do it for this round of stuff. Thank you for hanging in and listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.